It's the first time he's speaking out since the gubernatorial election in November. And in this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with Senator Vincent Sheheen. Senator Sheheen, let's begin with the obvious. Today is Inauguration Day here in South Carolina. Tell me, where are you emotionally?
Everything is great. I plan to go to the inauguration.
Yeah.
Drop my son off at school this morning. We'll be back there this afternoon to pick him up. It is a little surreal to think we'll have had Mark Sanford and Nikki Haley for 16 years, but the motto in South Carolina is "While I breathe, I hope." So
Yeah.
I always think that things are good.
And let's talk about the time back in November when you actually lost to Nikki Haley. What was that like for you?
Well, it's never any fun to lose, but it was an incredibly enjoyable campaign. I got to meet thousands of people in South Carolina who really wanted change, but change is very hard in a state like South Carolina. I knew that getting into it,
Okay.
but I think it was well worth it to be able to advance the issues like four-year-old kindergarten, like reforming state government,
Right.
and drawing attention to the fact that kids were literally dying at the Department of Social Services under this administration. Those things need to be exposed and talked about, and we need to make progress. And that's the point.
And you talk about the DSS situation. As we sit here right now, what do you want to see happen next?
Well, what we really need to have is that this administration take responsibility for what's going on in the Department of Social Services and appoint the most qualified person in America to run that agency and get it into shape and restore confidence with the employees, to allow there to be a free dialogue of employees who work there instead of the fear and intimidation that we've seen over the last 4 years. So number one is getting the most qualified person. Number two is to recreate what should be in every state agency, which is an agency that has openness and accountability and transparency that we've been lacking.
And you talk about the DSS situation. Since this is 2015, that is, what else do you want to see accomplished?
Well, my strongest goals this year are to advance four-year-old kindergarten across South Carolina. We're behind Georgia, we're behind North Carolina. Sure. We made great strides over Governor Haley's objections the last 2 years. It's important we finish that, and I'll be rallying my colleagues to make sure that we have four-year-old kindergarten across South Carolina. I would like to see us invest in our rural roads.
Okay.
They're falling apart.
Yes.
We haven't seen any action in the last decade. I would like us to see leadership at the top to fix those roads. And then, of course, we've seen declining incomes for South Carolinians for the last 5 years. We have to turn that around. That means investing in education and higher education. And it also means believing in our own businesses, not just those we recruit from out of state, but helping small business people across South Carolina.
And you talk about education. Let's talk about President Obama's initiative to really allow people to go to community colleges really for free. I am wondering, what's your take on that, and how would you allow that to happen in South Carolina?
I absolutely think it's an incredible idea. We ought to allow and encourage people to get as much higher education as they can. Often that means technical training. It might mean being a master bricklayer, electrician, jobs that pay really good wages. It might mean going into a mechatronics course that will lead to a job in an industry, an advanced industry. In South Carolina, what we have to do is quit disinvesting in higher education, which we've seen under this administration and the Sanford administration. And as we see budget surpluses, we need to begin to plow those into our higher education institutions and make sure that especially those two-year colleges are affordable to our citizens.
And let's talk about your future. Obviously, you did not become governor of South Carolina. Tell me this, what's next for you?
Well, the wonderful life I lead is next. So I'm in the state senate fighting these battles.
Right.
I am in my small law practice in Camden, where I represent businesses and individuals every day. And I am able to spend a lot more time with my family, which is wonderful. So life is great.
And speaking of family, let's talk about them. How are they doing right now?
They're great. Thanks for asking. My twins are at Clemson University, freshmen. They are in those sciences. One's in engineering and one's in biological sciences. And my son Anthony is in 8th grade. I dropped him off at school on the way. He had 2 instruments with him. He is into the band, and he's begun to play the violin as well. So I'm extremely excited about all that they're doing and proud.
And do you think they will take the political path that you have taken?
You never know. I think that growing up with a dad who's been in the State House and the Senate for most of their childhood probably has at least opened their eyes to how important it is. But there are many ways to serve, whether they serve in elected office or by supporting candidates or by volunteering in the community. Their mother and I will be proud of no matter what they do.
And do we see another Governor Sheheen coming soon as far as running for governor?
I don't see that in the cards.
Okay.
I think I've carried the torch of change for the last really 5 years in South Carolina, and I'm ready to hand that torch off to somebody else. It's important, though, that we don't let it go out. We can't continue to do what we've been doing over the last last 16 years and think that anything is going to change or the state's going to get better. We have to have new leadership, and I'm glad that I was able to advance those ideas over the last 5 years. Although we weren't successful in the election, we certainly made changes in the state. But it's important for others to pick up that torch and run with it and hold it high.
And speaking of election, do you think that whole YouTube clip that went viral really sank your election?
I think we know Democrats across America got beaten in historic proportions.
Okay.
I think the race was very nationalized, and unfortunately, on the national level, Democrats were not popular with the majority of voters. So what happened in South Carolina is the same thing that happened in Georgia, the same thing that happened in Arkansas, the same thing that happened in Maryland, and the numbers were pretty much the same. Sometimes you're in control of your own destiny,
right.
Sometimes you're not. This just happened to be one of those years where the national narrative really was dominant.
Yeah. Well, Senator Vincent Sheheen, this was so great talking to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was good to be with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.